Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Trevor Skelly. I am with GCP. Very happy, although I should say not under these circumstances, but nevertheless to be with you in the National Center this afternoon. On this webinar, we're going to be discussing responding to the SBA's 8A audit letter, the 8A audit letter that many of us have been expecting, and indeed many received on December 5th at about 8:30 in the morning East Coast time, a little bit earlier for our friends on the West Coast time. I wanted to, before we get into the substantive materials, Michelle, next slide, if we could ask for some opening remarks from Mr. Chris James, the President and CEO of the National Center, and Mr. George Williams, the Program Manager for the National Center's Apex Accelerator. Chris?
Thank you, Trevor. Thank you so much to GCP for hosting not only today's webinar, but this week. We really appreciate this advocacy effort of making sure that you get this really important information out to all 8A participants. There's 4,300 8A participants around the country. The National Center, we have several hundred clients that we work with that are in the 8A program, and this information is critical in your 8A reporting and your 8A development. It's very important that folks are very responsive, and I'm sure that GCP will be urging this many times today, but it's very important that you be responsive to the SBA as you get all of your documentation together for this important date, which I believe is January 5th. So make sure that January, is that right, Anna? I'm sorry. No.
It's been extended to January 19th.
January 19th, even better. So yesterday it was January 5th, but even better. See how important it is. So January 15th. So you do have about a month, exactly a month to get this information together. So Trevor and Anna will go through everything. One of the programs at the National Center for American Indian Enterprise Development does have is our Apex Accelerator. And I'm going to introduce George Williams, who is head of our Apex Accelerator, and George can give you a few remarks as well. Thank you so much for joining this webinar today, and I'll turn it over to George.
Thank you, Chris, and good afternoon. The National Center Apex Accelerator is one of the 5 Native American Apex Accelerators funded in part by a grant from the Department of Defense to assist Native American businesses with federal contracting. Both individual and tribal businesses owned by members of federally recognized tribes are eligible to receive our free services, which include assistance with government agency registrations like SAM, bid match. This provides daily bid notices tailored to your company's products or services, SBA certifications such as 8A, like we're talking about today, the Service Disabled Veteran-Owned Small Business Program, the Woman-Owned Small Business Program, and Hub Zone, and also our specialty federal contracting programs that are unique to Native American businesses, such as the Buy Indian Act and the DoD Indian Incentive Program. The National Center Apex Accelerator covers 61 tribes in 33 states, located in the Eastern, Navajo, and Southwest BIA service areas, with offices located in Georgia, Louisiana, Arizona, Colorado, and New Mexico. I look forward to today's presentation, and I would like to thank GovContractPros for inviting me to participate.
Hey, thank you, George, and thank you again, Chris, for the opening remarks. And really thank you to the participants that are on the call. Michelle, if we can go to the next slide. The 8A audit is indeed critical. The SBA's guidance has not been particularly acute or helpful, so we're going to walk through those matters. But at a high level, what we wanted to do is sort of start off with a background of the 8A audit, take a look at where we started in January of this year and how we've gotten to this point. We're also going to take a look briefly back at the hub zone decertifications that occurred in 2023, because at GCP we think that investigative effort will yield some guidance or maybe a path forward as to what we can expect next. And then we're going to walk through each of the 13 items that the SBA has included in its demand letter. Finally, we'll answer questions. Before we get started, I'm very pleased to be joined by my colleague Anna Sanders. Anna is the Director of Certifications and Ongoing Eligibility at GCP. She's been assisting dozens of our clients in preparing for this response that we received or that our clients received, and all active 8A participants, and frankly, some inactive or graduated 8A participants received as of December 5th. So as a way of background, I mean, I think, we can go back right to the beginning of the administration. The administration quickly issued an executive order banning what it deemed radical and wasteful spending on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives that were either paid for by the federal government or that were otherwise required through federal contracts. And we saw a rash of terminations for convenience. Hopefully, those on the call that were impacted by that, either at USAID through the terminations there, or at terminations through various contracting offices, submitted termination for convenience settlement proposals. But the administration was very clear that unfortunately it viewed largely the 8A program as a form of diversity, equity, and inclusion, despite the SBA, and in part given the National Center's efforts to make sure that the SBA made clear that at least for tribal participants, that was not the case. But nevertheless, the SBA administrator in her day one memorandum stated that due to what the SBA deemed an adverse impact to or a disproportionate impact to service disabled veteran-owned small businesses, that it would reduce the SDB, the goaling that had been raised by the Biden administration, from 15% down to 5%. Next in the timeline, most recently, we saw the suspension of ATI Government Solutions, stemming from quote unquote investigative journalism via X or Twitter, in which case certain employees or low level employees at ATI bragged of a quote unquote pass through scheme for Native American 8A contractors. To our knowledge, ATI it has been suspended, but the department is still proceeding. And finally, we saw Senator Ernst introduce legislation to halt SBA 8A program spending via federal contracts while this audit is ongoing, and sent a letter to 22 to the 22 agencies to say, please look into your 8A contracts. So we've been sort of expecting the 8A to take action on the 8A program, and we believe that this letter that was received by participants on December 5th is merely sort of the start of the investigative process in which SBA and other agencies are participating. Briefly, touching back on the hub zone decertifications. Some on the call may remember back in 2023, there was a DOJ investigation of an individual named Aaron Sams, who was leasing employees to hub zone companies. Anna, if you can take us through, because you had some thoughts on sort of how this might be the reverse or somewhat similar to the hub zone situation.
Yeah, so I think this is actually the exact reverse of the HubZone investigation. So there, they had the bad actor of Aaron Sams, and then they looked at who he worked with, and the people that he worked with or had contracted with his entities received these sorts of investigative letters, and then potentially even decertification letters. But it was very targeted. Even if it was a large group of people, there was a reason why they were receiving the communication, and not just because they were in the program. Here, every single 8A participant and some recently graduated participants, former participants, received the same sort of letter of just saying, give us all of your financial documents. And, reading the tea leaves or just putting on my tinfoil hat, I think that they are looking for the next Aaron Sams or multiple Aaron Sams. So they're trying to see, based upon all of the 8A participants' financial statements, are there some bad actors that should be targeted? And then from identifying those bad actors, then taking another look at the current 8A participants to see how they were involved, and if the SBA can kick people out of the program based upon that relationship and bad acts.
And based on those letters that were received, one of the takeaways from the hub zone decertification was, in fact, if the hub zone did not respond, then they were decertified. So as we move forward with the 8A document demand letter or audit letter, we want to make sure, as Chris said in his introductory remarks, that each of the participants that is active in the program that received one of those letters does respond completely to these demands. So what we know is that the 8A demand letter was received by all approximately 4,300 8A active participants on December 5th. And what's also interesting is, despite the fact that there is sort of a bifurcation in the 8A program between those 8A participants which are owned by individuals and those that are owned by entities like tribes or Alaska Natives or Native Hawaiian organizations, that there was no distinction or differentiation between the letters that were sent out. So if you are at a entity-owned 8A participant, you received the exact same demand letter that was issued to all of the individually owned 8A program participants, despite there obviously being nuances and different regulatory reporting obligations. Nevertheless, the SBA decided to proceed with a single letter. We learned yesterday, initially the SBA had indicated that there was a 30-day response time, so January 5th. That was changed yesterday via frequently asked questions that the SBA has posted to its website. I'm not sure if SBA will send out a supplemental notice to all participants to say that the extension has been granted until the 19th, or the deadline submission is now the 19th of January. But at least in the frequently asked questions, the response date is the 19th of January, 2026. So you have a little bit of extra time. My colleague Anna has included the frequently asked questions from the SBA into the chat for your ready reference. Anna, do you mind walking us through what last 3 fiscal years means?
Yes. So, as everyone knows, the original letter was very confusing. It just said last 3 full fiscal years, or in some places, last 3 fiscal years. What does that mean? The SBA clarified in their FAQs for number 1 that it is the last 3 full completed fiscal year for the 8A participant. So if your fiscal year is aligned with the calendar year and ends December 31st, then you are producing documents for 2022, 2023, and 2024. If you are aligned with the government's fiscal year, then things will be shifted because your fiscal year 2025 has already been completed. But I guess the way to think about it is, what year were you in on December 5th? And so that's the current year. So you just go look back to the previous 3 full fiscal years from that point.
And so one of the feedback, or one of the concerns or questions that we've received from a lot of our clients, or comments, I guess I should say, is we've already submitted this information in our 8A annual review. And the SBA, sort of addressed that, or didn't address that in the letter, by saying, to the extent you did, information need not be submitted again. Anna, would you mind, giving some advice on what's reported in the 8A annual review versus what the 8A demand letter is requiring?
Yes, of course. So what is required for your annual review, 99% of it does not overlap with what is required here with the SBA demand letter. The only item that I am aware of that overlaps are the financial statements that you have to submit every single year. Some people submit their financial statements just for their program year. Other people do it for the last full fiscal year. So that's something to be aware of. But even if you've submitted your financial statements for these fiscal years that are being requested, typically in your annual review, you submit them as a PDF. Here, they are asking for them to, or they're demanding that they be submitted as a .csv file, which is not an Excel file, but it is similar. I would argue that and I would recommend that a PDF and a CSV are not the same. So you should resubmit those financial statements in the correct format. But everything else, unless somebody goes above and beyond what is required of your annual review, nothing else in this demand is submitted with the annual review. Things might be submitted sort of in a summary form. So for example, the annual review requests 8A contracts. Well, you don't submit your 8A contract, but you do submit your contract worksheets. So you've sort of identified what contracts you're working on, but it's still not the same. So I would just be prepared to have a document or multiple documents over the last 3 full fiscal years for every single request, because most likely nothing has been submitted, at least in this format that is currently being demanded.
Thanks, Anna. And another note on the letter that was received by the 8A participants was the sentence, failure to respond may result in ineligibility for continued participation in the 8A program. I would read that to say failure to respond will result in ineligibility. So you must respond. Now, will you be decertified, kicked out of the program immediately if you fail to respond? No, most likely not. You will receive further letter from the SBA proposing early graduation or termination. It will not occur instantaneously, but nevertheless, it is crucial to reply to this demand letter by the 16th, by January, and also to make sure that you are, and we're going to walk through this in the next phase of the presentation, responding to each of the 13 unique reporting matters. But before we get to that, Anna, can you just remind the participants where we're at with the different SBA IT systems and how to respond?
Yes. So if you were certified and entered the 8A program prior to January 2025 of this year, you are used to certified. That's where you probably submitted your application, and that's where you've been submitting your annual reviews. Well, starting in January of this year, they opened up MySBA certifications. Sorry. I'm going to refer to it as MySBA to distinguish between the two. But they opened up a new portal called MySBA for entity-owned applications. And then at the end of August, they are requiring all annual reviews for every single 8A participant to occur in MySBA. None of the documents that you have ever submitted in Certify were migrated over to MySBA. So we recommended to our clients at the time, and I'm going to reiterate here, go into your Certify account and just download everything that you can. If you can get screenshots of your previous annual reviews, print those to PDF so you know exactly what you submitted, what you said, just for your own records. But that information has not been migrated and will not be migrated over to MySBA. So what you have to do is you have to first create an account with MySBA. It is a completely new portal. I believe if you have SBA loans, it might be that same login, but it's the different login from Certify. And then once you create an account, you have to claim the business. They say it's the qualified owner that has to claim the business. In this case, when you're an entity owned, I would recommend the professional manager or whoever was handling it for Certify. And then so you'll claim the business, you'll have to enter some basic ownership information. So I think it's like who's the manager and who's the owner. You might have to give an email address, and then you should see the data call, or I believe they're calling it the data demand up top, which is where all of these responses will go. I'm sorry. And to claim the business, you need the UEI, the cage code, and the TIN, the tax identification number.
So great start on the getting ahead of the new system. This report has a forcing function. So if you haven't gone through your 8A annual review yet, if you haven't submitted additional applications, those will need to be in the new system. So now you will, as a result of your response to this demand letter, have the appropriate access in order to make those applications, make those annual reviews. Before getting into the 13 items that we had prepared to go through in greater detail, we just wanted to again highlight as a part of this 8A demand letter, and as Anna said, the SBA is casting a very wide net here with regard to document production, but to revisit some of the themes that have been unfortunately used by the SBA and by others in government to describe the SBA, to describe the 8A program, and that's waste, fraud, and abuse. So, these 8As are a pass through. So what does that mean? The SBA is going to be looking at the limitations on subcontracting. 8A programs are a fraud. What will the SBA be looking for? Possibly, benefits reporting by entity-owned participants, excessive withdrawals from individually owned participants, common service providers, similar to the sort of Aaron Sam situation. Are there nefarious actors in the sort of 8A world that we can pinpoint, that the SBA can pinpoint as a result of this document production demand? Waste. These 8A participants are wasteful. They don't produce any value. Really, they're just a pass through. Here again, SBA might be looking at the documents that we're going to be describing shortly to determine profitability. If the participants are wildly profitable, then most likely the assumption will be that, that if that profitability is outside of normal market ranges, that really there's something that needs to be looked into further. And finally, abuse and kickbacks. SBA will be looking on payment ledgers for all of the transactions that have been paid out to individuals and entities by 8A participants. So, next slide. Okay, so here is the first item, the first of the 13 items that the SBA is demanding that you produce via the MySBA portal. And this is the general ledger. I should say at the start, neither my colleague Anna or I are CPAs or accountants. Both of us are lawyers, but to say that these reports are generally easily obtainable through QuickBooks or through your accounting software. But the general ledger, and again, you can go to QuickBooks or ADP or whoever you use. It's a report that you can pull out, but it is the main accounting record of the company, and it's going to contain all of the financial transaction organized by accounts like cash, sales, expenses, etc., and show how each transaction affects the business. This is sort of the master picture or master document that SBA will likely be using to evaluate each of the 8A responses. So likely audit items, looking at limitations on subcontracting, potentially excessive withdrawals, how benefits reporting is being recorded, because payments to Native Hawaiian organizations or tribes or the Section 17 or the holding company, how are those payments sort of flowing? And again, identification of common vendors, common employees. And anything on the general ledger?
I just think that this is sort of like looking at the demand holistically. This document, every other document that they ask about, has to fit in with this document. So we'll get to it later, but the vendor list should appear here. The payroll should appear here. Subcontract, like all of those things should appear here. And if something's missing from here, it shouldn't then just appear somewhere else. So that's all. Just make sure that this makes sense holistically.
And as we're going through this list of documents, I know people are active in the Q&A or the chat. Please feel free to use those functions. We'll do our best to answer those as we can. But I think I would be remiss if I didn't point out Anna's advice in that we are answering the question that's been asked. We don't want to necessarily volunteer additional information. Now, some advisors, particularly in the tribal context, are suggesting that either, as a result of this review of a general ledger or review of the materials more generally, that especially tribally owned, ANC owned, and entity owned concerns produce a sort of memo which explains how the money flows from 8A participant to holdco to Section 17, or however your particular entity is organized. Anna, did you have any thoughts on, sort of preparing supplemental documents or narratives?
Yes, I have lots of thoughts. So like Trevor said, I recommend you answer the question that is asked. Now, those narratives explaining how your finances work, I think there's no problem with preparing something like that internally while you are preparing the documents for a response here. But I don't see the point in handing it over, because right now, the SBA letter is directed to 8A participants. It's not directed to tribes. It's not directed to ANCs, and it's not directed to the NHOs. So I don't see the point in giving the SBA a guide to connecting all the different entities. The SBA should know their regulations, and the SBA should know how all of these entities operate within their programs. So if they have follow-up questions, that's fine to respond then, but I don't recommend giving them a guide for the follow-up questions.
Now, before we jump on to the next slide, though, and we'll make this document available, I think, there'll be a recording of this presentation and, we'll include our contact information. But Anna's also prepared what I would say is a really important cover letter. Anna, can you walk us through the cover letter, though, that we're recommending?
Yes. So the cover letter is pretty straightforward. It just says, here are my documents. And it's then organized by the request. So it contains the full request for item number 1. And then I recommend saying, here's 2023's general ledger entitled whatever the document title is. But what's really important is that the cover letter says that all of the documents are designated as confidential commercial information pursuant to 13 CFR 102.7. Regardless, again, you'll get this information, so don't worry about it. But we think that on January 20th, the day after everything is due, SBA is going to get a bunch of FOIA requests. And this is really confidential commercial information. It is very sensitive. So you're not wrong to designate it as such. And the cover letter does that. And we also recommend putting, if you want, watermarks or something in the header of the documents, and for the CSVs in the file name, just say confidential. And then with the cover letter, we recommend uploading it to MySBA, but then in addition, emailing it to your BOS. And I don't recommend emailing the documents, but just the cover letter, just so your BOS is looped in, and it's a second level of proof that you submitted everything timely.
Thank you, Anna. Next slide, please, Michelle. Okay, so the trial balance. Here, similar document to the general ledger. You can pull this from QuickBooks or from your accounting software. The trial balance summary report, cash, receivable, payables, income, expenses, etc., in debit and credit form, all in one place. What we just want to again call out, though, is as you're going through your accounting software, just paying attention to the specific requests. So here on the trial balance is for as of the last day for each of the last 3 fiscal years. And also, to Anna's point earlier, the file type, here a CSV file. So where the audit letter demands a CSV file, don't upload an Excel, don't upload a PDF. It's just going to get flagged, and you'll likely get further inquiries, even where you've made, legitimate efforts to comply. Just ensure that you're using the right file type and you're paying attention to the dates which are being requested. Next slide, please. Okay, so a lot of words on this slide. Again, we're going to make sure that the presentation is shared with everyone, but for purposes of the presentation here, IRS Form 4506. Anna, you've gotten a lot of questions on the IRS Form 506. Posted it already to the chat for participants to take a look at if they haven't already. Can you give us some guidance on, what the 4056 is? And how to produce it.
Yes. So, on your annual review, you have to submit the entity's taxes if they file them. Here, this is just the form 4506 it's eliminating the middleman, which is you. It is allowing the SBA to go directly to the IRS and get your taxes, or get the file taxes directly from the IRS. It should be for the entity in case there are any individually owned or 8A participants here. It should not be the owner's personal taxes. It's for the entity. And you need one for every single year. Again, I don't know if everyone's read the FAQs on this. Their FAQ is a little confusing because they say they want the taxes filed in 23, 24, and 25. I interpret that to mean they want the taxes that you filed in those years, which brings us back to 22, 23, and 24. So you need two, though, depending on how you file taxes. If you submit employer taxes, then you have to file a form or submit a form 4506 for, I believe it's the 941 form. And then you also have to separately do it for the 1140S or however else you file your tax, you file the entity's taxes. So at the end of the day, there should be 6 documents. And we're just recommending you have to say who you're releasing it to, and we're just recommending the SBA's office, but we think it's just going to be done digitally. And we also don't think that people are going to have to pay, even though the form makes it look like you'd have to pay. A lot of people, though, have been filling out the form 4506T. That's different. That's requesting a transcript. That is not what you're supposed to submit. It's just a plain 4506 document, and the link to the IRS one is in the chat.
Thank you, Anna. So again, high level here for the 4506, you're looking at potentially 6 documents for the 2 sets of tax records that are going to be produced. Make sure that you are filling out the IRS form 4506, not 4506T. I think I'm seeing questions about tribal taxation. So recognizing that many tribal entities do not file taxes, what our advice has been to our clients has been to produce a document, which I'm assuming many file in their either annual reviews or as part of their 8A application, particularly the 8A application where it asks for previous taxes, a statement that the tribe does not pay federal income tax. I'm not going to elaborate on what the content of that message is, but for purposes of this 8A audit, what we would recommend doing is, in this case where the IRS form 4506 is requested, it's requested in a PDF format, produce that verbiage, that language, save it, convert it to a PDF, include it on the cover letter document that you'll be receiving from GCP, and uploading that PDF to the portal. Because what you don't want to have when you're submitting at the end of the day is empty, sort of portals. Remember, this is sort of a drag and drop or file upload. So you don't want to have blank sections. You want to include a response for every single section. So where your tribe or your entity does not file federal taxes, we're recommending that you include that statement as a PDF in each of the 3 panels for the 3 applicable years. Michelle, next slide, please.
Just to add, and that goes
Oh,
for, no, it's okay. It's not just for the taxes, but for every single section. So let's say you were admitted to the program in 2024, and so you have some documents for 2023, but you have nothing for 2022. Then for each section that requests it, I think I would put it under prior year 2 is how they phrased it. But you should submit some document that says this entity was created on this date, so therefore we don't have any documents responsive to this request. Or we don't have any documents from 2022, and upload that for every single item for that year. Like Trevor said, there should be no blank sections. I don't even know if you'll be allowed to submit if there are any blank sections. So just be very mindful of that.
There's
Thanks,
one more
Anna.
question about the form, the 1065 in fax versus.
So I would say definitely consult your tax preparer or your CPA. I mean, the 1065 is a return. I'd have to go back to my tax days. Is a U.S. return of partnership income. So, Anna, do you have thoughts?
Yeah, I have thoughts. So I think, again, the FAQ was confusing. What they're saying is don't submit that tax form, submit the form 4506 requesting that tax form. I mean, the only thing I can think of is that the SBA thinks people are submitting falsified Photoshop tax forms with their annual reviews. So the SBA just doesn't want to see your taxes. They just want to go to the IRS to get them. But I agree that that response, that question and answer was a little confusing.
Yeah, so the IRS, so you will have to check some boxes, but again, make sure that you're consulting with your tax preparer to on the form 4506 to make sure that you're requesting or authorizing access to the proper tax return documents that we've described. So the next item on the list, bank statements, seemingly pretty simple, but maybe not. The SBA has asked for bank statements as of the last day of each of the each of the last three fiscal year ends. So FAQs not super helpful, response or demand not super specific. Anna, do you have, can you walk us through what we've been advising or using to prepare? Because I know when I go to my bank account, it says you've got a statement for January, you got a statement for February. I don't have the option of creating a year-long statement.
Exactly. So if if your bank gives you the option to have an annual statement, great, you can submit that. If not, just pull your December 2022, December 2023, and December 24 bank statement. I mean, I don't think there's necessarily any harm in submitting all of them, but there are limitations for how large a document can be. It can only be 25 megabytes. And who wants to upload 12 documents when they only are requested one? It is just the bank statement as it existed on the last day of each of the fiscal years.
So again, notice for the participants on the call, our advice is really to respond only to the demand that was produced, and that is very express here as of the last day for each of the last three fiscal years. So if you do not have that sort of annual ability to produce that banking record, then your December statement, which is a bank statement as of the last day of each of the three fiscal years, so that would be sufficient. But if you do want to upload all 12 of your months, nothing in this response prohibits you from doing so, but we just wanted to call this item to your attention. Next slide. Okay. Bank reconciliations, very similar to the cash book or general ledger. This is the cash records, easily obtainable from QuickBooks, but this bank reconciliation, building on the last request for those bank statements, likely will be looking at excessive withdrawals in the case of individuals, benefits reporting, where are the 8A participants paying their profits out to, and then potentially common vendors, common employees. Anna, anything else on bank reconciliations?
Nope. Sorry, I think somebody got off of mute. Sorry, that took me out. I believe that this can be easily obtained from QuickBooks. And again, it's a PDF file just of the last day of each of the three fiscal years.
Next slide, Michelle. Okay, payroll register and reconciliation. Okay, so here again, what we think that the SBA is getting at is excessive withdrawals and potentially kickbacks. We'll come back to this on the next slide because it's super important. But here, this is your payroll register and reconciliation. So all of the individuals that are currently on your payroll need to be accounted for in this report. Again, easily producible via QuickBooks, ADP, Paychex, Gusto, any of your providers. But this document comes out for the monthly for the last three full fiscal years.
Yes, and I just want to highlight that again. This is monthly. I believe this might be the only request that is monthly.
Thank you. Next slide.
Next slide.
Okay, so we have gotten a lot of questions on the list of employees. So notice on the last item for the audit, you produced your payroll reconciliation. For this particular document, it's building, we believe, on the last request. So you produced your payroll reconciliation, all of your payroll records. Now the SBA wants to see a list of employees broken out by contract those employees are servicing for the last 3 full fiscal years. And so what does that look like? We produced what we think is a usable sort of template or format. And there's a couple of things to notice here. So we've identified 8A contracts. So 8A contract number 1 and 8A contract number 2 in 2022. Notice 8A contract number 1, it's an option year. So let's say 8A contract number 1 was awarded in 2021, but you're still performing that contract in 2022. You want to make sure that you're identifying by contract number those employees that are servicing that contract during that option year. Similarly to 8A contract number 2, that crosses into 2023. So you want to make sure that you're reporting the employees that service that contract. Also, recognizing that this request is a snapshot in time, there might be employees that are no longer employed by your company. Nevertheless, we recommend including those individuals on this report because at that time they were actually servicing these 8A contracts. The other item that we've received some questions about, and I wanted to get into a little bit before turning the floor back over to Anna, was sort of management or indirect personnel that might be servicing these contracts. So as participants know, under Part 31, cost accounting principles, the FAR sort of breaks up the world into direct costs and indirect costs. So think your G&A and your overhead rates. Those individuals that are management or might not be directly participating or supporting a contract, your indirect rates that are, G&A and overhead, those individuals should probably be included in this list because if they're allocable and allowable under Part 31 as chargeable to the government, those individuals should be included on this list here. Anna, any other guidance on the list of employees?
Yes, and forgive me, I don't think we touched on this. So employee is not actually defined by the SBA's 8A regulations, but it is defined in HubZone. And so we pasted the regulation from HubZone's definition here. But notably, independent contractors are not included. Now, independent contractors might come up at another location under vendors, but I read this request as a list of all employees and then organized by what contracts people work on. So if you have some employees that don't work on contract, let's say somebody who's in HR, then I could envision a line below, let's say 2022, 8A contract number 2, right there afterwards, you would say not applicable for 8A contract, and then just list some names. You want this list of employees to align with the previous request for payroll. While these items are all requested separately, I think when everything is said and done, you have to look at it holistically and just make sure that all of these things align and tell the same story. And if they don't, that's fine, but take that note on your side, on the back end, and don't produce it to understand what happened and what needs to change.
Thanks, Anna. Next slide, please. Okay, next item. List. Nope, go back.
One back, Michelle.
It should be copy of all 8A contracts.
Oh, no, she's right. I'm wrong.
Oh,
sorry.
Sorry.
No,
List
it is
of vendors.
vendors.
Sorry.
All good, all good. Thanks.
Okay, so this, oh, sorry, Trevor.
No, Anna, go ahead, please.
This, we believe that this term actually came directly from QuickBooks because vendors does not appear anywhere in any of SBA's regs that we have found. And this should just be something that you can just hit export and the list of vendors comes up. But look at the question. It is just the list of vendors as well as all joint ventures for the last 3 full fiscal years. There is no request for how much you paid, what contracts they worked on, or any other details. So what we're recommending is you export that list of vendors, delete everything but the name, put it in an Excel spreadsheet, alphabetize it, and then turn it into a PDF and submit it, and do it for every year, 2022, 2023, and 2024.
And notice the list that we've prepared here of examples. We tried to be pretty inclusive. So, I mean, obviously QuickBooks or your accounting software should do this, but think your information technology licenses, travel, real property leaseors, financial institutions, other service providers. So these are effectively all of the businesses that you are making payments to. Presumably your subcontractors, which we'll get to shortly, will also be included in a list of vendors. But what we also wanted to point out with regard to the vendors is beyond the fact that it's not that the term itself is not defined, to just make sure that you are responding only to that question, which is actually answered here, and that is for the list of vendors, and to alphabetize it. No money, no frequency of use, anything like that. And anything else on vendors? I think we're good. Okay, thanks, Michelle. Copy of all 8A contracts. So the next item, 8A contracts. Anna, what are we reporting for 8A contracts? What are we uploading?
You're uploading the contract, modification, purchase order, anything. If it was awarded in 2022, 2023, or 2024, then it gets produced. Or if you worked on it, if your company worked on it in 2022, 2023, or 2024, the entire item should be uploaded. But again, be mindful of the document limit. It might have to be broken up.
Yeah, as a former federal contracting officer myself that created massive files because there was a lot of seadrills and a lot of other things that needed to go in there, just recognize that you might need to upload or break down a significant amount of documents. But what we're saying here is, because this language, again, is a little bit unclear. 8A contracts, which a firm is currently working for. What we have been advising clients is to produce only those 8A contracts, so 8A competitive or 8A sole source, that were awarded to your firm as a prime contractor. So let's say, for example, you're working on another 8A contract, but you're working as a sub. You have no legal right under the FAR to demand a copy of that 8A contract. So it would be unreasonable for the SBA to expect you to produce it. We've also seen questions, for example, I think with regard to teaming agreements. Teaming agreements under FAR 9.6 are typically a pre-solicitation document. So you prepare a teaming agreement, which is effectively a promise from the offerer to the government to say, if selected for award, we will team with this partner. It's a legally binding agreement, and you should evaluate our past performance. But unless that teaming agreement is self-executing, it's not even really a subcontract, let alone an 8A contract. So I would not worry about teaming agreements. Joint ventures, Anna, I think this is sort of a mixed bag. I think opinions here differ. Anna, do you want to give us your perspective on joint ventures?
Yes. So we say no. We say you hold it back. The SBA has not demanded it. If you read the letter, it says it is directed to your firm. Your firm is not the joint venture. The joint venture is a separate legal entity. So until the SBA says that they want those documents for that joint venture, I don't recommend handing them over. Again, I don't think you'd be wrong to, but you're going above and beyond. And I don't think you have to go above and beyond here.
And notice, because also, I mean, we recognize, joint ventures growing in popularity, federal contracts getting more complex, bigger. So certainly the prevalence of joint ventures, and particularly those that are made subject to a mentor-protege agreement, growing in popularity. You might have many 8A contracts that are awarded to your joint venture. But based on the language that we've received from the SBA to date, or that we've analyzed and we've conferred with, we believe that it's only those 8A prime contracts directly awarded to your entity. Also, another sorting feature, even though you are an 8A participant, it is most likely or possible, I should say, that not all of your federal prime contracts are 8A contracts. You might have small business set-asides, you might have hub zone set-aside, SDVOSB or WASB. If you were awarded a SDVOSB or even a small business set-aside, that is not an 8A contract. You do not need to produce it. And it also should not be included in your list of those 8A contracts where we're matching the employees. So, but make sure that you're uploading the modifications as well. Subcontracting agreements. Okay. What is a subcontracting agreement? Well, I mean, we've got some definitions in the SBA regs, but not particularly clear. But this is one of the reasons also why we are urging folks, where possible, in addition to using the cover letter, which will be distributed to everyone following the call, if possible, to include watermarks on documents that these are procurement sensitive and should be protected, because these documents themselves, this is very sensitive commercial information. So you want to make sure that it's being protected, but it's really uploading each subcontract that you have awarded in connection with performance of your 8A prime contracts. Notice related to the contracts in item 9, that's your 8A contracts. So your subcontract for your 8A contracts, all of those are included here. Anna, anything else on subs?
Yeah, so I think there's a pretty actually straightforward way to test yourself here to see if you should have some subcontracts. So for your annual reviews, when you submitted your 8A worksheets for the time period here, did you how did you fill out your subcontract or your work? I'm sorry, your 8A worksheet report. Oh, it's been a long week. So if there were any subcontracting identified there should be some sort of agreement, or if there isn't an agreement, then there should be an explanation as to why there isn't. But that's an easy way to test because the SBA already has that information too. Now, whether they're going to connect those dots, I'm not so sure, but it's a great place to start.
And that's a great point, Anna, because with these 8A worksheets, especially if the SBA does look back at your annual reviews, noticing that you already have supplied a significant amount of this information to the SBA and also to the federal government, because beyond the 8A annual reviews, and we didn't go over this on the slide for the payroll register, but some firms on this call might be subject to executive compensation reporting under the FAR. Those firms which receive greater than 25 million and 80% of that revenue coming from 80% or more of their revenue coming from the federal contracts or grants. So you might be reporting executive compensation in SAM, you're reporting executive compensation to the SBA, and now the SBA is asking you to produce the actual payroll records similar to the 8A worksheets to make sure, hey, does the math add up? You claimed that you were meeting the limitations on subcontracting, but as far as we can tell, this subcontract related to 8A contract number 1 is for 90% of the value, or, better case scenario, it's only 20% of the value. But either way, there's a discrepancy. So you want to be reviewing, your SAM, executive compensation reporting, if you've done that, your Service Contract Act reporting, your SCRs, if you're submitting those, which most likely you should be, with your 8A annual review data that you're submitting here. So really 3 places: SAM, through the FAR, your 8A annual review, and now this audit. Next slide.
Well, Trevor, I'm sorry to interrupt. Just being mindful of the time. So the last 3 items are really the financial documents. It's your financial statements, reconciliation, and then the subledger schedule. Again, those are QuickBook items, but I want to just see if there are any questions that people have, because we only have 7 minutes left, and Trevor and I can stay on for a little bit longer, but we just want to make sure that we address everyone's concerns.
And I saw one pop about the cover letter. So
just putting that at the very top in the first section for general ledger, because there's no limit on how many documents you can upload. So I would just put it there and just make sure that it says like cover letter, entity name, just very clear and explicit what it is. But
And
I
then
don't.
and then sending a copy of that letter to your BOS.
Yes.
Certainly not including any of the files that you have uploaded here. Most likely the SBA's email would crash, it wouldn't be received. But if you just send, we are recommending sending that cover letter once it's produced to your BOS, just as, check the box. I've not only complied and submitted this document to the SBA, but also I've let my BOS know that I've complied with this request, and she or he or they have a record of the submittal.
And I see the second part of the question is there's no place to load out of scope documents. I can tell you, because I've been in this system for a year assisting with applications, it doesn't check. It really doesn't check. You can put whatever document wherever you want. It doesn't matter. So then, yeah. So if the first one, right, is a CSV, so maybe the first place there's a PDF, but it doesn't check. And from what I've been told on the back end, the system is just sort of a mess, and it's not really clear where documents are uploaded. So I'm not even sure how useful the portal is for the reviewers. But that's actually a good point too. Make sure your document names are clear as to what the document is. As clear as possible. I know with the contracts and the mods, it's going to be very difficult, but for your financial statements and for the things you are preparing, make sure that it is just as clear as possible.
Any other questions that you're seeing? Let's see.
Oh no, I was wrong. I guess by the end, people have already gotten a bunch of feedback this week. It's very different than our Monday and Tuesday presentations. So I guess we can go through these. Sorry, everyone.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, these last couple of reports are, pretty easily exportable from your accounting software. As we wrap up the presentation, like we said, we're happy to answer additional questions. We will make sure that a copy of the cover letter and this presentation is distributed to you. We really, at GCP, we've long supported the National Center, and they've long supported us. The National Center, George's office, all of the National Center is a tremendous resource for you. So make sure, we just wanted to take this brief opportunity to thank the National Center for allowing us to present on this very important topic. I also want to emphasize, that this is your program. You've worked hard to be in this program. I would encourage you to talk to other 8As that are going through this audit, find out what they're doing. Maybe they have hints or tricks or, ways to produce this data, or something that they're producing. Maybe they're reporting their JV 8A subcon or contracts, and you think, hey, that's a great idea. I'm going to do it too. But recognizing this is a huge document demand, the what I'll say in closing is just do not wait until the last minute. Based on our experience with the SBA IT, and I'm sure many on the call's experience with SBA IT, it is likely to crash. So you do not want to be waiting until the last day and still be uploading documents. In fact, I think, we might see additional updates to the FAQs, which are likely to add more confusion, in my opinion. I would submit sooner rather than later, because once you have submitted, I would take a screenshot of the frequently asked questions as they existed on that date, and I would file that away so that when eventually, if you do get a response, you can say, I filed my response as of this date, and here's what the information that was available to me. I'm happy to provide additional information, but that's why what I submitted on this date was fully proper. Anna, any closing remarks?
Just claim the business as soon as possible, because MySBA, it's already being buggy. People are already having to call in and have things fixed. I've also seen some people who are in the construction industry who had multiple BFOs receive this letter to one of their BFOs and not their main office and main entity. If that happened to you, correct it, contact the SBA, claim the business under your regular UEI. But just all these things take time. So yes, the extension is great, but I would just pretend as if it didn't exist. Try to be ready as soon as possible.
Thank you, Anna. And thank you again, everyone, for participating. I know it's, getting late on a Friday, heading into the holiday season. We're available as a resource. The National Center is here available as a resource. We will get through this together. This is a statutory program, and you all are doing excellent work for your agencies that you're servicing. So if you have questions, please feel free to reach out. Please talk to each other. But I'm sure we'll be in touch. GCP will continue to provide updates to our clients, and also feel free to follow us on the LinkedIn. We're trying to put out information there as well. But we look forward to hearing from you in the future and seeing your many successes in the 8A program and elsewhere. So thank you for your time on this afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.